Where is that?
And then you should be able to go back to the Zoom.
Yeah, so you go back to. Get the video. There.
Oh.
There we go.
There. Right.
Let me just.
So are you gonna take minutes? Okay. All right, so let's call the meeting to order.
6:01 p.m. Meeting to.
Candace, I just talked to her this afternoon, so she will be here, but she's not. She's not right now. Okay, adjustments to the agenda? Any adjustments? Maura?
I think that we should have public comments for items not on the agenda before the approval of the June minutes.
Okay,
Move that besides the adjustments to the agenda.
okay.
And then I would also like to add another item about maybe not having an August meeting,
Not having,
an August meeting. Or not having it the first week in August.
Discuss
oh,
status
okay,
of August
when we get to scheduling the next.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, because we also want to talk about whether it's going to be Wednesdays or Thursdays or.
Right, but my feeling was that I wanted to see what the feeling was not to skip August.
Yeah, I definitely had that idea as well. No, okay, so do you want to do that down with the scheduling of the next
That would
meeting?
be fun.
Okay. All right, so let's then do public comment for items not on the agenda. Any
Members of the public
from our
here on this.
public? Okay,
All right.
all right, and now you all have minutes. Do you all have minutes, Marcia? Okay, so you want to review those and give any changes? And then, yes, Mara.
When I approved the minutes, it was as amended, so, because we changed a couple things. So just need to put in, approve the minutes as
As
amended.
amended, yeah, Catherine's last name is M.E., not E.N. Lerm,
Ler.
M.E. Just not M.E. instead of E.N. on the end.
Where do you?
Public.
Catherine,
Catherine,
Catherine.
Oh,
changed it.
Lereme.
M.E., not E.N.
Right.
And since we're having a meeting, technically we scheduled it for the 7th, but it was rescheduled to the 14th, so that should be in the minutes. Okay. On the back page.
That should be in these minutes here.
Mhm. But it was, next meeting was scheduled for July 7th, but then it was rescheduled for the 14th.
You? Okay, any other corrections, additions, misspellings?
Catherine's name again, the second paragraph.
It'll be throughout.
Where are you
Yeah.
here? Oh,
Oh, yeah, sorry, just wherever you see Catherine's name.
yeah, I just saw it over
Yeah,
here that I,
that's all.
I
it's just-
It's on the left page.
all right, great. All right, can I
Yeah,
have a,
otherwise it's fine.
are you okay? Can I have a motion to,
So, I move to accept the minutes as amended.
second? Marcia, thank you. All those in favor? Okay. Great. Okay, old business. The library community center survey. I have tallied up everything that has come to date, and this was our deadline.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow is our deadline. And so I just did this. And I think there's a lot of, I mean, it's not surprising, these numbers. We looked at another version of this last month. But what I think is really interesting about this is the difference between the top 10 library spaces and services. Do you want a copy?
Yeah, that would be nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll do
But
another.
it's still only 70, did you get one? Okay. It's still only 74 responses, which isn't great, but the top 10 in the library goes from 58 responses down to 31. And the top 10, I had to do the top 12 in the community center spaces and services because I only, there were so many that were up in the 40s. I felt I should include them in the top. 59 votes for something is 79.78% of the 74 people that took the survey. So that's a pretty high number. And when you get down to 50, it's 67.5%. So I was looking for things that were more than, about 2/3 or more to see what people were, where we were at. So, and there's a lot more responses in the community center, side. And I guess when I thought about it, I thought, and I'd be interested in other people's opinions, I thought it's because something's missing in this town. It's not because people want more community center and less library. I don't think. I mean, if you didn't have a library, I think the numbers would be very different. But I do think that there are certain things that are missing that people would like on the community center side. And the library side, the big numbers are a children's room, visiting authors and book illustrators, and a reading spaces or reading rooms for adults to be in quietly, and a children's story time. So, I mean, those are really very clear library functions, and many of those are happening right now, but that's, what people are looking for. On the community space and services side, a large enough room for town meetings and a space for group meetings. Hi.
Be seated up here.
You can sit right over there. I don't have another survey, so you can share maybe with Marcia.
Hello, everybody.
So, but on the community center side, there's this large enough meeting for town meeting and a way to subdivide it for group meetings or some other rooms, I guess. Exercise classes, which has been a top 10 for quite a while. Emergency shelter, a kitchen facility, and then we go down into art exhibits and speakers and sort of activities. So I think, for Gabe to start to work on design, we have some really good information right here. And then if you go down to the comments, there's no big division between those who want a new building and those who want a renovation. It divides pretty quickly at that point. If you look at both sides, somebody wants a swimming pool, somebody wants a gym, so, but, there are a few items there that I suppose give you pause. So, people want to open more days per week. I think that's a really good goal. But anyway, so I'd just be open to what you're reading from this report.
Is it a forced rule to wear this here now and the mask?
No.
Okay.
I can't hear.
Oh, is it a forced rule to wear this?
No, I understand.
I understand, but I'm
But you're-
uncomfortable, so thanks. Okay.
So, wow.
Town meetings are gonna be great, group meetings, exercise classes, they're great, and the kitchen facility is super. Emergency shelter, that's something I never gave thought to, but when you think about Owl's Head and you think about the people here in this area, they're gonna gravitate because they usually do to a school. Why not to this facility? This, particularly for people who have mobility issues. I think that's a great idea.
Well, the old red schoolhouse used to be an emergency shelter, but because it's in a flood zone, it can't be. But the town has an emergency shelter in the church in Spruce Head. And the church donated a generator so that we have a generator there.
Lovely.
And there's a group of us on that committee that Betty heads it. who's
Oh,
our
excellent. Thank
EMT
you for
person.
that. Yeah, I didn't know
Is it necessary to have another one then?
It would be nice, because you have Spruce, if, let's say, because it's 5 miles, whatever it is,
Right.
5 minutes. That's why there was 2, but because, and that's why the reason there was a generator purchased for the library, because it was an emergency service for this area, because it is, depending on road conditions, usually it's for, with electricity being out, people might not be able to get one side or the other of the community.
It would make
So-
sense.
And so Betty really wanted 2 places.
Should a new, I mean, a new facility like this would have some kind of backup power anyway.
Oh,
so-
sure.
But it would be, but we need one on this side.
Yeah,
I think
I think
so.
it makes sense.
And
it really does.
Has backup power, there's no reason not to just designate it as emergency shelter, because it'll be fine.
Would that also though be considered as a flood zone if the Little Red Schoolhouse was?
No, it's quite a bit uphill.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
On those.
But when we had, in the storm that we had, I think it was 18, because in October it always rains, the water came up all the way up the ramp of the landing area,
Mhm.
and it was, and where that sharp turn is by the gig, it was all flooded.
So I guess, other thoughts, I mean, I know we're gonna talk about the design process under new business, but I think this information has been gathered so that Gabe could do, the design work, begin the process of thinking out a building format, and so I think if we have comments about this, we should air them as much as possible right now, so we can get to
I
work.
think so. I mean, there'll be more, I mean, one of the things that sticks out to me is a lot of these things. There's a lot of different things, but it's not necessarily a lot of rooms.
Right,
No, but if you have movable.
Yeah, movable walls, but also just like
Yeah.
a lot of, some of these things are the same size. Like a group, like exercise classes, town meetings, speakers,
Mhm.
visiting office, like there's
Sure.
like, there's like 4 or 5 different things here that you can start to put together.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the things that we'll talk about later in the the design
Right.
process is like, the next level is having a conversation with this group about like, well, which of these things make sense to be together, which of these things we really want to have dedicated space for, like, I think that's to me, the next,
Right.
just the thing to look for on this list is like, how do we start to imagine like these activities? Some of these are rooms, but some of them are just activities and some of the
Yes.
activities.
Yes.
Well, I see the library having dedicated space, both a children's room and an adult reading area.
Yeah.
So that, but I also see that where you have computers and that and reading area, that's an open area that can be accessible at all times, because just reading this in my own personal, that's what people want.
yeah,
And then to go and sit down with a friend and then, and have a chat, or a couple people and have a chat, not just on Saturday mornings, but any time during the
Yeah.
week.
Well, being a teacher, though, I'm gonna throw out a little bit of a wrench in the fact that if we can get people, there might be people interested in their GEDs. There might be people who have some kiddos who are having some problems, and there are a few of us in the neighborhood that want to do some tutorial work. I'm hoping there would be a little dedicated space there,
quiet
because, yeah, children's attention spans would
Yeah,
not
no, I think
focus
there's
there.
definitely
you're thinking
gonna
about
be-
children.
definitely
Well, for
gonna be-
tutorial, yeah, okay, yeah.
I think there's definitely like a mix of a few spaces that are enclosed and
Mhm.
quieter and a few spaces that are more open.
Right.
I think maybe there should be, and there will be a whole meeting where we just say like, go through the idea of each room
Mhm.
and generate a big list of the things we want the room to be, to
Yes.
do. And that'll be, that's where I'm gonna start. Like, that's what we call the program for building, is like the list of requirements, the list of spaces, general sizes, and then all the color, like all the notes. So you have the quantitative and the qualitative aspect of the spaces. And then from that's when you can start to generate some sketches or ideas about what the floor plan could be, or what needs to be next to each other, like, where's, how do people move around. But this is a great starting point. I think just,
Somebody
Yeah.
suggested to me that we take photographs of what's happening now I don't know what you think, just to see how things are being used now currently.
Oh,
in the interim.
temporary, yes, yes.
And I don't,
That'd be lovely.
you think so? What do you think?
A
Anybody?
picture's worth 1,000 words.
Yeah.
One thing that we never put on the survey, but I think should be noted for, is to have, because it'll be a new building, a space dedicated to the memory of Guilford Butler, with pictures
Some aspect of
and,
it.
and, you know, pictures of it and the pictures of the classes. So there's a memory wall for bringing that together and the people that went there. So there's something that represents that.
You haven't been in the current,
I guess I have.
okay. So
And there
that's
is,
like-
there is that, but it needs to be included on the new building. And, you know, and the other part is when the building is taken down, the bricks, you could make a wall with the bricks from the original building. You could also sell the bricks with people putting their names in it
It's a fundraiser.
as a fundraiser.
I think
There-
it's cement blocks, it's not bricks.
There's bricks on
There's
the
bricks
outside.
on the
and cement
facade.
on the inside.
Yeah, that's facade on the
It's two
front.
layers, yeah.
And so there are those things, and I think, you know, we didn't ask that, but I just want to put that brigade that we should have that, because they've already started it, because when they had the original meeting a couple of years ago in 2019, they dedicated the room that's now the meeting room
Mhm.
for all the memorability of the school, so it had all the stuff.
Yeah.
And now it's made it smaller when you walk in.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I have your email where of all the various fundraisers and,
Yeah.
things like selling bricks or things like, looking at some of your notes
Because
here.
the other thing is on the fundraising side is that if you have a community center, a senior center, or an emergency shelter, there are different
There are grants for all
grants for all of those. And so that's why you want to have this building and having these types of things, and because you can get grants.
And also we can get donors for certain
Right.
things too. I mean,
And-
if we're gonna go for large donors, people, and they want a naming possibility of, this room being dedicated to this group of people who are interested in donating to that. That's one way we can start to think about
Absolutely.
fundraising as well.
And South Thomaston currently is an older community, so those are things that they look at as well.
Okay, any more on that? Let's just, I think we're done with this. Unless somebody sneaks in a survey tomorrow. I'm done.
I'm impressed with the results as far as, I wish we had more numbers, but the diversity.
Yeah, yeah, I thought it was really good. At first I thought maybe the survey had just way too many things on it, maybe we should have put it into buckets, like children's activities, But it's interesting to see all these different activities and find out what people are interested in and where it started to pile up into numbers, and then it sort of made some sense to me. It's not that I don't want contests for book reading or, it's just that it's a lower priority for a certain number of people. Not that that couldn't happen, but I mean, it's clear on the community side, we need a big room, we need a kitchen facility, and we need an emergency shelter. That seems very, very clear to me. So, yeah.
It's really interesting. When I was first joined this group, I did some research, I'm sure a number of us have, and the importance of libraries in communities. And it was surprising to me, and yet when I sat back and reflected on my moving several times, I use the library in the same way, and it's a social logistic awareness of what the community has for people who are moving into the area. Doesn't matter what age group you are. The resources, people, contacts, it was really amazing. So it's far more than books.
Right.
And that's an important piece as well. So the library community, I love that.
Well, I mean, Ann Just is a big proponent of that, and talk about Ann in a few minutes, but that's what libraries have become. And I don't know if any of you ever read the book Library by Susan Orlean.
Yeah.
I just started.
Just the greatest book about Los Angeles Public Library and how it went from, really strict books and now, the homeless people are sitting there all day. I mean, just how it's being used as a community space. And I think since we don't have the Grange anymore, and that seems to have been a big loss in this town, for those that remember it. That's where they used to have dances and they used to gather and, it seems that that's what I think shows in the community side here, that's what's missing in this town, something of that nature. And
Yep.
So, all right.
Thank you for doing that.
Well, sure.
Yeah, it's great to see.
I tried to do like 2 items, 3 items at a time, and I got so confused, I had to start all over. Like 3, 2, 4, but whew, that was hard. Okay. Fundraising contacts to date, I didn't bring a sheet of that. I'm just, as people send me ideas, Sandra sent me the Maine Community Resilience Partnership grants, which are 50K, which we might want to look at in a couple of years. So whatever you've sent me in terms of funds, granters, people, well, I haven't really started with donor people yet, but I'm making a spreadsheet on that. And then I'm collecting other ideas that are not about grants, but are about things like, let's see, selling bricks, direct appeals, various things. And, as we get into planning the fundraising out on big sales, plant sales, and then I guess one of the big questions I have, which is not for tonight's conversation, I don't think, is how are we going to cooperate and coordinate with the existing interim library? I still think that's an outlier right now, and I don't really have a good solution to that, but I would like one. So I think that's important. Okay. Incorporation of nonprofit library, community center, auxiliary, and nominations for board of directors. Here's what I know to date. I went to the select board meeting on Tuesday night and they voted to, let's see if I get the wording of this right. John was instructed to contact our attorney to ask if we should begin the process of incorporation. And the question was, should we get the board of directors set first or should we incorporate? And my opinion is, it doesn't really matter which of those you do first. You have to do both of them anyway before you can, and then the board of directors has to meet before and pass the bylaws. So all of that has to be done. So he did, I talked with him today. It's in her hands. She is going to start the process of incorporating, which is not an expensive deal. It's just paperwork, really. And that doesn't mean that we are yet tax exempt. That's another process of applying to the IRS. So we have to establish the incorporation in the state of Maine, and then we have to choose board of directors, and then we have to have them meet, pass the bylaws, and then we can begin the process of looking towards the 501c3. So that could be a couple months until we've done all of that. We talked a little bit at the select board meeting about how to proceed with nominating for the board of directors. So just as a reminder, our committee will nominate 3 board of directors. The select board will nominate 2, and one of the select board will be on the board of directors, and then Penny will nominate the 7th. So there will be 7. And Jeff Northgraves said, is there a way that we can meet our committee and the board of directors to talk about, to start the process of how we're going to choose board of directors? And John asked me that again today. And I said, I think it's a great idea because we're not about, it can't be about, we want these people and you want those people. That's not going to, we need to have people with, skill sets, people that have specific expertise. So again, I don't know if that will happen before September, but John is interested in trying to begin to start finding that meeting date. So I guess my question to everybody is, how do you folks see generating a list of people. I mean, how do you imagine that we should go about this? I know what I might do, but I'm just kind of curious what everybody else thinks.
I'm thinking, and I'm not shy about talking, so if I talk too much, please ask me to wait, and I will respectfully do so. People who are aware of finances and financial comings and goings, because they become huge and intricate. I think we also need people who have very good social skills, who might promote of some sort. I also think that we need to have people who know law or would be willing to look up aspects of law to keep us going correctly.
Yeah.
Well, it's unfortunate Candace wasn't able, Candace wasn't able to be at the meeting last time, but you set up a spreadsheet with all the different issue subjects for each person for the board, but I'm interpreting your question as how to come up with names and to.
Yeah, and the process.
And the process.
Process is all.
So to me, my suggestion would be that we come up, we can decide how many people, like 4 names each per committee person. And write a tiny, paragraph bio of why this person would be good and what skill sets they have. And we present them at a meeting.
Yeah.
And then we pare them down so that when we meet with the select board, we've got a list that's a hard list.
Yeah.
Not just a fluff list.
Right, and that's actually what I was alluding to, but without saying people's names, but you do, of course, you want people's names. But thinking about the skill sets
What
they
they
own
need.
and what they bring to the board. And some of these people that need to be flexible and aware that when we have dissension, that we work it out easily, because there are times it's going to get heated.
Oh,
Did you get a copy of those people?
I don't have that.
No, I was away because I was in Florida family issue.
I just wondered if you got a copy, because that's it.
Yeah, we'll send it.
I can send you
Great.
that matrix.
Thanks.
Yeah. I also did a lot of, I don't want to speak yet. I want to hear from everybody first. You have any ideas about how to-
I mean, I agree with Moira. I
Yeah.
think like having a internal discussion where we agree as a committee on at least some priorities. I don't know if we need a hard list of names before we meet with the select board, but I think we need to at least understand what our priorities are that we would like to advocate for, such that the select board, when they're considering priorities for the people that they are nominating the same people with the same skills as we are. Maybe it's more of a coordination on, goal setting at first, as opposed to just names, but maybe it makes sense to do it all at the same time. Where you have the names ready too, but I think to me, that's just the most important part is having everyone in the same room so that we can
Right, so when we,
mention it, mention a person.
if we
and say,
each come with a
these people
set of
complement
names
each
and
other.
ideas. I mean, my feeling, since I've only been here 12 years now, is I would go to some other people in town and say, okay, this is what we're about. Talk to me about who you know in town, how they might fit into this process, who they know. But there's other things too, and I think being, good communicators, especially for a president, being a good writer, especially for the secretary who's gonna have to write all kinds of things. Being really good at finances, working with whoever is going to keep our books, if it's the treasurer or somebody else, keeping databases of so we need certain things like that. But we need also some people have some, go ahead, Marcia.
Well, I think we also need to include people that might step forward that we might not think of.
Right.
Encourage, try to
Right.
bring people.
So maybe there's a
in,
way of inviting,
Reaching out.
reaching
somehow.
out to the public. I think that's a great, another step, not just us trying to some kind of communication to the community to step forward and serve. But I did a lot of reading about boards and directors. I'll pass this. These are notes. These are my notes. It's another list. I don't know where it's coming from. Oh, here, let's do it this way. We need a paper binder. Okay. Here, I have another one, Laura. You have one for- I don't, so it's more detailed at the top and less detailed at the bottom. because I was trying to go through, what do people want out of a board of directors? And so obviously, what would be the expectations for a board member? Aside from their skill sets, they need to be willing to attend board meetings quarterly at least. Committee participation, so there will be active subcommittees that will include some of us. They need to be willing to do that. Special events, always, they have to go to. Fundraising and marketing campaigns. So they have to be willing to help with getting funds and approaching people themselves that they know. Any board recruitment, they need to be involved. Site visits to the building or other places as required. And a financial contribution. Now, this is what everybody gets a little bit nudgy about. You don't want to limit it if somebody can't, is not a big contributor, you can't. But there is something called a capacity gift, which means that if you're a person that gives $10,000 to things, then this should be one of your gifts, to the library community center. If you're a person that gives maximum of $100 to the food bank, to the this, to that, then the community center library should be one of your $100 gifts. So somewhere, your capacity has to be, you have to give to your capacity, I guess. So that has to be somehow. So I thought that was a pretty interesting list. I don't know what you all think. Fundraising will be a core responsibility of the board of directors. That's what our job is. Their job is as our 501c3. Everybody must give every year. And then these, committees, we're starting to figure out what kind of committees. So I just started, developmental aspects of fundraising, grant writing, involvement with locating funds through grants. Communications would be an aspect of that. Committee responsibility. So then I don't even look at the last part. I was just starting to think about board meetings. But so anyway, that along with that matrix, I think gives a pretty, and I asked John today, I said, you want me, I started making these notes and he said, not yet. If I give it to him, then it becomes public information. And he said, don't do that. So, which I understand. So.
Can we add to your expectations?
Say,
Can we add to your expectations?
yes, please.
Please, yeah.
Number 8 actually should be number 1, believe in the mission,
There you
which
go.
is always your first thing when you're on a board of directors.
Yeah, mission aligned.
Yeah,
Mhm.
mission, I have that somewhere else, but not on here. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely, it's number 1. Other additions or questions or disagreements?
I would just make a comment, they don't have to be a citizen resident of South Thomaston.
A board member?
Mhm.
I would disagree.
It's not in the,
I know, but I would
I
disagree.
yeah,
with
I
that
don't,
person.
you know that for a fact,
it's not in your,
Not in the bylaws.
it's not in the
bylaws,
bylaws.
right.
And I
That's right.
believe, you have a lot of people here that some are like in Spruce Head, but they're not residents, but they do pay taxes.
Oh, well, that's different. I was thinking we were looking at Rockland Candy people.
Well, I think you're limiting yourself because there are other people out there that could help, but because they live someplace else, I think you're closing off a door. But I'm looking at the people that live here part of the year, but they're not residents, that have a lot of experience And you have people that already have their own nonprofit boards that live here part-time. I just think if you close the door and say they have to be South Thomaston, because that's a whole area of people, because this town has a problem getting people on the committees already.
Yeah.
I resigned from the budget committee after 14 years. I thought that was plenty of time. And there's nobody that signed up. That's just one example.
Yeah, that came up at the.
And so we need to have all doors open and all options open.
Well, I'm willing to listen, but at this point in time,
Say it again.
I said I'm willing to listen, sorry, but to discussion. And I'll do my own reading on the side because I need to educate myself more about this. But at this particular moment, I'm still feeling that I would not like to see somebody from Camden or Portland become part of our board member. I also would like to say that the persons that we are thinking about on the board, I love this little town. I've only been here 2 years and I moved here for its quaintness. Yes, I know there are things that need to be rebuilt or changed or whatever, but I don't want this to become Portland. I want it to stay this beautiful little wonderful place and appreciate its integrity and give it a little fluff, but not, that's the wrong word, but to keep and maintain its integrity. I don't want to see that change. And so if it does, I'm going to be upset and have an adult temper tantrum.
Well, I understand that. I think I moved here for the same reason, actually. But there are good examples of libraries not very far from here that haven't changed. They're new buildings. They have not changed the character of their little towns. But a fundraising campaign is a lot of work, so you have to realize that it's not about the big givers, but it's about a gift to the town to make it, to go into the future. It's not about the past, it's about the future.
Right, but I'm also thinking about people that we encourage to become board members, that they need to respect this wonderful integrity, this little village. And
That's
I think
maybe an
we need to
expectation.
I
Maybe
think
that's,
we need to pull more of them in, I think. I think we're all sitting here as we've lived here for 2 years, 15 years, whatever. We need to pull in some of the people that have lived here for 3 generations. I'm not sure we're doing that. If
I
we're
know
trying
a
to get
couple
people.
of long-term lobstermen that I would definitely want to approach.
Right,
Right.
right.
Before
we start bringing people in from outside of town.
But maybe respecting the community's history and values is part of, what we would expect.
well said.
I don't want Rockport Library here, believe me. That's a monstrosity as far as I'm concerned. So,
I think they think so too.
That's
except for
interesting.
the one big guy ran that
Yeah,
show.
yeah.
Yeah, that would not be my idea. Any other thoughts about that?
I think having the expectations is gonna be clarifying when we start to give names. Just knowing, like, thinking about what these people actually have to do and how we might approach them and ask them to do it.
Yeah. So between now and September then, how do we want to, do we all want to be out there talking to people, looking for people? I mean, I have a list of people that I'd like to sit down with and say, okay, help me think about who we could approach for this. And I'm happy to do that. I'm going to do that, but I don't know how the rest of you feel about this.
I think we ought to just keep talking to people about the facility, which I think most of us are already.
I think,
And that way we may get some names.
Yeah,
I think at the meeting in September, people bring names.
bring in
Yeah.
3 to 4 names.
Another homework, and I guess I'd like to step back. Did everybody participate with fundraising and everything? Did you get information from everybody?
Oh, to add to the fundraising.
Yeah, but my question is, did everybody give information?
Well, Gabe has a list, but I haven't got your phone, you know,
Well, I
like,
owe you that.
yeah, you did it, I did it, who else? Any grants or any fun, you know, places that you
Yeah, and
probably don't know here.
right, well, no, I have to tell you, that's a weakness of, for me, I've never been a grant writer. I have participated in
Yeah.
giving
Yeah,
information,
well,
but I don't know resources.
Yeah.
If you've got places for me to look where I can.
So you would be,
glean
you know, a researcher. I know you could be a researcher, but I, you know, like Anne just has, even though she has resigned, she's willing to look for all the library sources that can, you know, she can dig up and happy to do the research.
Because there's a large group of retired librarians that live in Spruce Head on Patton Point Road and Village
So we
Road.
need to have those names, I guess, to.
And there's quite a few of them. And they should be an ad hoc committee to help. And so there are people that we can use.
I like that idea.
And Penny is also resourceful, so
Yeah, I know.
she has many options, and I wouldn't mind chatting with her. We could sit her down couldn't we, over a beer or something.
On Sunday for potluck. That's when you'll see her at the brewery.
Yeah, no, the only thing is I'm hardly hearing this summer, so.
All right, so do we need to just say everybody will come with a list of 3 to 4?
That's fine, yeah.
3 to 4 people, we don't have to vote on this, right?
Nope,
Okay.
that'll be homework first. for the next
Homework,
meeting.
it's your homework, it's part of your next your next steps and tasks, homework. Okay. Great. A job. Okay. New business. Okay, so Anne has resigned from the committee for personal reasons. She's got some medical stuff going on and some personal stuff going on. But she's very happy to support the project in any way she can regarding library grants and foundations. And specifically, though she worked in Massachusetts all her professional life, she will be happy to look through the Maine. And I think she has a good relationship with Penny too. I think they might even be able to share resources on that. So that would be good. And maybe the other librarians that you know of, that would be great. So anyway, she's here, but she's not going to be part of our committee. And I think you maybe all know that Penny has resigned from this committee. She just feels like so much is going on at the library and that she needs to be there and not here for meetings. And that she expects that the volume there is going to increase in September. And so she wants to be fully present there.
I'm gonna send minutes to her just so she's in the loop.
Is she going to attend?
Are you gonna send the minutes to her once, so she's in the loop, just, because she should be in the loop. I understand how busy she is, but
Okay,
I just think that would be something that would be good to do.
all right, that's a good idea.
Once they've been amended.
And then, all right, that's great.
But aren't the minutes, they're on the town website.
They are, but that just,
But she's also very busy, so. if we just
it's
put
it's a nice
on-
gesture, because you have to go to the website, go and find it, so
It's
she
easy
can, she can take it or not
Just
read
that.
it.
And then just a couple days ago, I got an email from Catherine Lerm, and she would like to be on this committee. So
I worked hard on 2 people at plant when we were weeding, but I got no. And Catherine was one, and I pleaded with her. And Sandra told me no too.
she sent,
You did email us, yeah.
yeah, she sent an email to Terry. It was forwarded to me. I forwarded it to John. I think he probably already had it. Or I'm not sure he had it, so I forwarded it to the select board. And they will take it up in August at their meeting. And their meeting is scheduled for, if we decide not to have a meeting, that won't in August. Anyway, they're gonna meet about this before any proposed meeting that we would have if we should happen to meet. So she will likely be confirmed as our new committee member. So that's good. So we're back up to.
Good.
our-
See, she ruminated afterwards, thought better of it.
So that's exciting. And now I'm gonna just turn it over to Gabe to talk about our design process and what we need to be thinking about.
Well, I wanna say,
Yes.
yeah.
I missed a couple of the Zoom meetings, so it's already decided that there will be a brand new structure, that the Gilbert Butler School is not going to be rehabilitated, basically because you wouldn't be able to do it to meet the needs that you have determined.
So
this
Article 7, well, Article 10 last year was the charge that we were given to form this committee with the idea of building a new library community center in place of Guilford Butler
So
School.
like, that was part of the
But
original. mission.
and then there's an addendum to that article, and that if we cannot raise the money, if it proves that we cannot raise enough money to do this, then we can reconsider the renovation of the Guilford Butler School.
Fine, thank you.
What happened, Penny has been given, the library has been given this opportunity to move in for a period of 5 years from the fire marshal because of all the code issues. And at the end of that period of time, that has to be revisited. And we don't really know what that would mean. And if it means that a lot of work has to be done, then that's going to also be, a costly piece of building.
And they can only use the floor that they're currently using, just the upper floor.
Yes,
The lower floor doesn't have,
It's condemned. The lower floor cannot be
yeah,
used.
it doesn't have adequate safety.
thank
features.
you.
Does that answer?
There's more information on the town website about like the report, there are reports from architect John Hanson who examined the building.
And there's a structural analysis report, so if you want to,
More
I
information than
just
you
got
want is
the copy,
available.
that's all I need.
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting.
It is, but it's worth looking at, yeah, a minute. Anyway, I think we talked about it a little bit, the design process. I think now, what we were basically waiting for was the deadline on the survey, before we started the process of working towards a building design. When I say building design, I mean something at a very schematic level that's adequately developed to produce images that might be used for fundraising. And, floor plans that might be used for fundraising. Something concrete to build consensus around in the community. Like it says, all these functions, it has to be developed enough to achieve those, but shouldn't be developed much beyond that, because until we know a little bit more about exactly like how much money we have and things like that. There are detailed conversations that are not a good use of time. So I think that, I might even add your homework for the next meeting potentially. And just say like, at the next meeting, we're gonna wanna come out of that meeting with essentially that list of rooms that I talked about at the beginning. So that's reviewing the survey, thinking about, if you think about the libraries and community center, think about spaces you enjoyed, like things that you think are really high priorities, things that you think would be great value for the town. And just start to think about to you, what are those most important spaces and what do they want to feel like? Like what characteristics they need to have to fulfill their functions. And I would also say, there's two parts of it. One of them is that part that we just discussed, the list of rooms is very technical. It's about just assessing what the requirements are. And then there's a whole other piece, which is, this building is essentially going to be downtown in South Thomaston. Right? It's one of the things that people are really going to see and experience when they see and experience this town. So after we start to think about what the basic layout is, we also want to have a conversation about, how does it look? How does it feel? Like, what are the materials we think are appropriate? What are the architectural references that we think we want to harken back to, or we don't wanna harken back, we wanna look forward in a different way. Like, there's all kinds of, one floor plan can become 100 buildings. If it needs to. So I think that's the process that I envision is we begin with the list of rooms, we start to talk about that basic technical floor plan stuff. But we have in the back of our mind, like, that we're trying to produce a more holistic vision than that. And then as we start to build consensus around the layout, then we can start adding that in. And by the end of the process, I think, a reasonable goal would be the end of this year, maybe,
But to have the floor plan?
to have some
Rough
design things developed.
Right.
And I think, my role will be, we'll basically have workshops in these meetings where we talk about, first, we're gonna be developing this list. I'll write it down, check the square footages based on the things I know about building code, et cetera. And then we'll report back, and then we'll have a discussion of the list that's produced, so we'll iterate in that way. And then we can start drawing floor plans on the whiteboard, I think we want to get sort of hands-on with it and
Okay, absolutely.
have, it can be like a little bit messy and experimental. So I think I would expect from
It's like a
now
post-it
on. It is a little, I've been in those meetings are great.
I know, I agree.
There's circles, I want this, I want that.
Yeah,
I want
exactly.
this.
It also, it helps people who are not terribly good at interpreting just the verbal part. It's putting it into a visionary piece,
Yeah, I think so. What I would expect and what we'll do as we build these meetings is include a piece of that process in each meeting going forward.
And then we would pass this on to this committee, the fundraising committee.
So when the fundraising committee, I think, is gonna be involved in terms of providing feedback on what materials they actually need and want to do their job.
Right.
So if they say like, what we need is like a floor plan, but we don't want it to look just like a floor plan, it wants to be like some color on it, it's like, we need to make sure that, at least for me, the output of the process is what it needs to be to get the fundraising done.
3D design.
And the versatility of the building usage.
Yeah, and I mean, we can, that I feel confident about, like, we can get that done. But when we have this board of directors, they're gonna be key discussions about, how we spend our time just like literally making content. But that sort of is after this period of early like design discussion. That becomes something more like what we pivot to after that part is done. And we feel like we agree as a committee on generally what the product is, and then, we bring the board of directors,
Then we pass it to them.
pass it to them in the form of like a beautiful pamphlet that they can then
Right.
send on to people, or whatever it is they decide that they need, That's sort of how I envision their role in the process. The select board was pretty clear, I think the bylaws are pretty clear that the goal of that organization is to raise money.
Yes.
And that we, the people here who are at least more accountable to the town than the board of directors would be,
Right.
we're the people who are gonna be making those decisions about the design.
And I think the townspeople would feel more comfortable that way too. Can I just ask you one question? I'm thinking about movable walls, and I know it's a minutia and ahead of the game, really.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm asking is, I've been in a school system that utilized them, and those were just no better than curtains, basically, and they're horrendous. So have you got an idea, or could you bring many samples so that if we're using that, here?
Yeah, there are nice ones. They're expensive. That's
I
the
know.
trouble.
There are nice ones like in galleries. There's a whole
Yeah.
wall that swings, so depending on the type of exhibit, and that they can swing back and forth, but that's gonna be part of the plan, where some can be like that, or some will need to have a roof over it, so that
Up to the roof, yeah.
Yeah.
depending, there's so many options out there now.
Good.
No,
Yeah.
no curtains.
And they can be glass ones, they're glass, it's not glass, there's a lot of options. I would just say we
Doors
want-
didn't work well,
Yeah.
so.
So I would just say that, as we consider that, that's always just gonna be a cost benefit.
Thank you,
Like, we wanna make sure we are placing these, like, we'll just wanna make sure if we agree that we want a movable wall, like, to think about, what are we using it for? Like, are we putting it in a place where it has the best value? Like, and that's the sort of thing we could talk about, because I have a general idea of what these things cost, not a great idea, because the prices are,
Let's hope that.
fluctuating rapidly. But, that's the sort of thing that I can give feedback on to the committee as you guys are, as we are sort of collectively generating ideas. It's like, and just keeping an eye on that cost benefit piece.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Just another question. I seem to recall reading somewhere in the Guilford Butler Futures Committee report that they also wanted it to be capable of expanding later to add on a town hall. So is that still part of the vision?
I mean, we have to decide. I mean, we can take that committee report into
You know,
consideration, but yeah.
that however you design it.
Yeah, but that it could be
in
expanded on
addition-
later.
Right.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think
it
that's
sounds
still,
reasonable to me, yeah.
I think what's definitely what the select board still has in mind from my conversations with John and Jeff. And actually, just recently, John said it again, thinking that eventually maybe town offices need to be relocated.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
the Town offices.
That's, pretty
Right,
far
they're
down. Yeah,
always
but
going
no,
down the
but I
road, but
think
it
that
needs to
is,
be kept in mind at
Yeah,
this
of
stage. If you
It's
don't
gotta
want
be
to
a-
foreclose it by
Right.
inadvertently.
right,
I think size is important. This could keep growing. I mean, we could end up with a 12,000 square foot building if we, okay, we want this. There has to be some limit to what's going to be done.
And that's where I think the thing we were talking about before, which is, thinking about this list and not just saying like, well, okay, we need a room for visiting authors and we need a reading room and then we need this. It's more like we can be creative about and pragmatic about how, we can get the most that we can out of a certain number of spaces. And you really don't, I don't think this list of things doesn't sound like a huge building to me. Like, it sounds like a carefully considered
well designed.
building, but it doesn't sound like an enormous building.
But the other option is how much money you raise, is how much you can build.
Yeah.
I don't know what per square footage building costs are these days. Have you been keeping track of any?
That's my job.
I mean,
Yeah, I know, I'm old enough, I'm like building a garage, let me tell
They're
you.
high. No, I guess, right now, we gave a presentation to a nonprofit wanting to build a building like this Monday, and we asked them to budget $400
$400 per square foot.
it's a pretty nice building.
That's pretty reasonable.
I think that sounds really, I
And
thought
that's
300.
that's
And
that's better than net zero energy performance.
Okay, I was gonna ask you if you're gonna have
Yeah,
alternative, so that's pretty reasonable.
$300 a square foot 10 years ago was a pretty good price for house building, you
Yeah.
got
and
pretty
these
nice.
buildings are a little bit less expensive per square foot than
Yeah.
houses are.
Yeah,
And that's a nice thing, like if the building, an institutional building is a little cheaper. And just you have to be
a big
smart
open
about
space.
figuring
isn't-
these things, but,
Mhm.
400 square foot is what I would say right now, and that's the biggest asterisk in the world on that that's today.
Right.
But that's sort of where we're at.
And do you remember what, Laura Libby is one that we looked at when we were in the Guilford Butler Futures Committee, because they went ahead and did a renovation of that for the fire department, town offices. And it's the same footprint as Guilford Butler, but not a lower level. And they had added on a wing at some point for the upper grades of the school. But I think they were spending, I think they spent a couple $1 million on that building. And then once it was done, they had to replace the boiler. That was sort of a surprise. But I remember John Hanson saying something about $250 a square foot. Does that sound? I think it was in the 200s, which was, again, however many years ago, that has to be
It's about 2018, because
Yeah,
we lived in
5 years, I
Thomaston
want
at
to say
that
it's
point.
4 or 5 years ago when they were working on that. So if you want to look at what what that looks like, that's a good place to go and take a look around. And I haven't been in, so I don't know what the finishes are outside, but I have heard that they're very nice. So,
Is there a possibility of us doing an alternative to adding to the present Guilford Butler School, including renovations to that to make it up to code and then adding on?
You mean like a cost comparison?
Yeah, or fundraising, suppose we need $4 million and we only get 2. Do we have an alternative of what we could do, to spend 2 creatively?
I think, right now, it's not our mission to assess that, but I think in that situation, that's when the amendment to Article 10 would kick in.
That's right,
Like,
And that's in 5 years.
and that would be, it just says like, if circumstances materially change or something, but like, I think the understanding is that we're giving ourselves a pretty good amount of time to try and build a new building, and then raise the money, and then should we fail to do it, then yes, we would have to get creative and think about what would be next, like that, and then that would become our goal and our mission. But I think we need, not right now, I think,
Okay,
is what I
yeah.
understand about our mission.
But that's clearly stated, thank you.
Yeah.
any other comments? Public?
I just have one. I think we need to, we've gone over Article 10 many times. We need to be all on the same page that we are fundraising for a new building. And we have that goal for the next, I'll just say 5 years. Then, if that doesn't come, then we have to look at other things. But we can't do both things at the same. It has to be that we're doing a new building now. And it constantly is brought up about, well, what about renovation? Renovation isn't our mission at this current point.
No, that's right.
And I just want to make sure that we are on the same page that we're going forward, because we had at town meeting, we had this people coming up saying, well, what about this? That wasn't what the article that was voted on last year. So I just want to put that out, that we be on the same page.
And I want clarification of the purpose of this committee. Our mission is not fundraising, because we're going to do a 501.
Our mission is also
Our mission
fundraising.
is fundraising. It's 2 things. It was building and fundraising. And when the original put out,
I understand that, but now that this 501 is being formed, are we still fundraising?
we're
or-
still-
Well, I would say in this case, once we figure out who is going to, if one of us, or we're gonna hire somebody to run the fundraising campaign, there are people that will keep us all on track and tell us what to do, and I think it's a good investment of money myself, but there will be a variety of things to do for fundraising. One of them is grants, one of them is direct, contact with people and asking for money. One of them is planning things that Ann just calls friend raisers. How do you get the community involved? It might not yield a lot of money, but it happens regularly. I mean, that's the thing that I would like to see, where the interim library and we can work together. It'd be great. And so you're bringing people in and getting people involved in giving as well as in running things. So that's all fundraisers, but it's not the big kahuna there. It's like, it's a community building process as well. I think the primary function of this committee would be to control, well, first the design process, and then, and the fundraising, working with a fundraising consultant to first, second, third steps and a timeline for moving forward. And also we have to be mindful of paying attention to the board of directors, we are basically in charge of them, I think, not them in charge of us. So we have to be, if we're not happy with what's going on, we gotta do something. So we have all that oversight
So you're saying this committee on top of the 501?
So,
I think it's basically sort of an all hands on deck scenario.
Well, yeah.
Just in terms of like making sure that the reason that there's this committee and there's the 501 is just to make sure we have the broadest possible reach for getting access to certain monies. Because there's some funds, some grants, things like that that are available to municipalities that are not available to private foundations. And there's a bunch of grants and things that are available to private foundations that aren't available to municipalities. So I think that was the reason to having both. I think the added benefit is just also, if we do successfully generate this board of directors and we gain some momentum and a few initial donations to hire consultants, we just have more people out there. And people who are more, their focus is going to be more specific and more targeted than our focus, which is sort of everything. And I expect that we'll work quite closely together.
well, I would assume that one of us on this committee should be
Probably
not an
not.
officer of the board, but be on the board. I think there's got to be some communication between the two groups. That would be my suggestion. And I think that's what Anne, no, not Anne, Liz Jenkins, that's how, that was her role. She was working between the 501c3 board and the building committee, and carrying that information back and forth and trying to keep the
But they
building.
were two separate, I guess that's my confusion, they were two separate, there was a building committee and a fundraising. It seems like we're trying to be a building and fundraising, and then there's a fundraising. And I'm just wondering if there's
Yeah,
some conflict there, or, not conflict is the wrong word, but,
well, there need to be some support for the building. I mean, I think originally we were supposed to be two committees, one for the building and
one chair,
one chair.
so that they could go
Yeah.
on two ways.
And in some ways, we're sort of heading a little bit in that direction.
Right, but you still need to have the cohesiveness of it,
well,
because,
that's what, yeah.
and so that's why we have to have hand in hand going through.
Absolutely.
That's exciting. So for September, can you restate what our homework is? I have down a list of rooms, characteristics of the spaces.
List of rooms and spaces.
List of rooms and spaces, like, think about it, like.
Yeah.
Put together in your mind, like, a list of the most important rooms and spaces, and a little bit of color on what you think they should
Feel
feel
like,
like. Not only what they, like, yes, what they have to do, but also like what they have to be next to. What do they feel, that's the sort of thing. Basically, there's gonna be
You need a flow.
imagine like a
and
spreadsheet
take
that says
pictures.
like,
If you see something, I would take a
yeah,
picture.
pictures are great,
Yeah.
definitely.
I took one of the children's room in Vermont and I was like, look at that. They have a little step up and the kids can sit in 2 levels for a storytelling. And I went, how easy is that? Carpeted, so I thought that.
Yeah, so I think anything like that, just like beginning to build that, essentially like our database of like building information. And also just so everybody is able to come to the discussion with, with their own thoughts that we can then sort of put in the room and discuss.
All right, great. All right. End of that discussion for now. Donations, we've had one donation. Someone in town, after town meeting, who had gotten an $850 check from the state of Maine, donated it to the, what a great idea, right?
Wow.
And so we do have a line item here, or whatever it's called here, for the library and community center, so people can donate it now. I had to write to him and say, we have no way function of accepting that, for a 501c3, because we don't have a 501c3 yet, but you can donate it to the town under the library and community center. He got one of the donor cards and all of that, filled that all out, and I sent him a thank you note. Would have been, I would love to have, I guess I should have some thank you cards, but it just, when we get to the materials, it would be nice to have.
Have the thank you card, you have the 3D design of the new building.
Yeah, it would be nice to have a little
Eventually,
schematic
sure.
on the
Yeah.
So, and I noted it, and I thought, oh, I just put that $850 in the bank.
I know.
You guys should do the same. I thought it was a great idea. So anyway, that's our first donation. He was very excited about that.
Oh, that's
Very
kind and very generous. really.
Yeah, isn't that nice? Yeah.
I wanted to make a comment here, and I'm going to have to go in 2 minutes because I'm meeting my kids for dinner. And it's the perfect point of donation, because you probably wondered, why is this woman showing up all the time at these meetings? I have actually been coming to Spruce Head Island for 40 years, summers, so I've been here a long time and seen a lot of changes. And my father-in-law was a school superintendent in Rockland for a few years.
Oh, really?
Yes, Robert Lutz was his name.
Oh, that's a
That's my
familiar name.
father-in-law.
Really?
Yes, and my husband's name is Robert Lunt also, who is deceased at this point, but I'm very interested in making a substantial contribution to the library in naming for my father-in-law and his wife, because I think women need to be recognized also. But I just want to be on record that when things are further down the road, I know it's kind of too early
Yeah,
at this
wait
point.
for the 501s.
Yes, because it's gotta be tax deductible. But I don't want my intention lost as things go along.
So you would like to have a naming for your
Yes.
father-in-law?
Father-in-law and his wife, yes.
That's lovely.
Yes.
Thank you so
And
much.
particularly interested in the children's reading room, because he believed in books.
Yeah.
Reading, yes, that was his thing.
Yes, it's the way to bring everywhere.
That's
Yeah,
great.
So, I want that, I just want to be on record for that. So,
Thank you.
good luck to you guys.
Thanks so much.
Betsy, it's Betsy, right?
Betsy, it's, well, Elizabeth, I'm formerly Elizabeth Lunt, but Betsy, yeah, that's what my friends call
Okay, well,
Okay.
we'll call you Betsy.
Thank
you.
me. Thank you.
Thank you so
Nice
much.
to see you,
Thank
see you in person. I won't be here in September. Yeah, I'll hopefully be in Germany.
Oh,
I know.
God.
Yeah,
Okay, all right, well,
Good
we'll
luck.
catch up with you. We know
Yes,
where you
I'll
are.
be here. Yes,
Are you going to Oktoberfest?
no, I'll be back before then,
Okay.
but I am going to Munich.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. See you guys later.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
That was great.
That was an unexpected
I know.
gift and pleasure. I mean, it's like, wow,
I know, I got those too.
There are a lot of people on.
Yeah, no, I know, I
Well,
know about
that's
her.
when I
I
talked to
know
a
why
few
she
people
exists.
over there to find out
Yeah,
all
I
those
was
names
able
and
to
probably
finish
know a
reading
bunch.
it, just saying.
I'm really happy.
Yeah.
Well, we should.
Well, that's
Wow,
great.
that was really lovely.
She comes into the library often, and she is, that's why I do appreciate she told us she was going to do.
Well, that's great.
Wonderful. All right, so next steps and tasks. I think we propose not to meet in August and do some of this work first. Oh, that's
You
scheduling
just
next
skip-
meeting. Yeah, next steps and tasks. Okay, so homework. We all need to get names for the board of directors. If you have a name, but you're not happy going to talk to somebody, you can pass it on to me. I am not shy. But I think, you know, I would suggest you try to find your names yourself. And so we come up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's already like 20 names. That would be great, and we can calm down. So that'll take a little bit of time.
And then the list of,
And spaces, and a list of names, and then the list of rooms and for the design process. And I will go to the library and take pictures at different times, and maybe one of you guys can help me figure it. I know Saturday morning is a big time. And
That's a gathering time for the community more.
yeah, and the game, I know Mahjong plays
Friday.
Friday afternoon. And when is book group? That's one I might.
That's, the third Wednesday.
Wednesday at
every
noon, right?
month. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
The children, we just had, because I volunteer at the library, we just had 60 kids come through Monday. Too bad, we, you know,
Yeah, but nothing.
there may have been, somebody may have been taking
If
pictures,
you-
if I can find
You
out, I
know, if
will.
you know anything and you want me to come take pictures.
Yeah,
I'll ask Penny first about whether,
yeah, I will see her tomorrow, so I'll ask
Okay.
if anybody took
we
pictures.
just want to see how things
Yeah, what's going on?
And how it's being utilized.
how it's being used and how many
That's
people,
good.
people come to different functions.
And then
It
you
was,
get the
it
flow.
was great. It was all these little kids and each one got to take a book and each one got to stamp the book and it was
Nice.
just enthusiasm for having a book. And they all took a bookmark. I mean, it was just great, just what you were saying. Let's get them excited at, 5 or 6 years old.
Can't get on an airplane, let's get a book. We can do
That's right. That's right.
Okay, that's it. Next meet, well, first let's decide, do we want to be meeting on Wednesday nights or Thursday nights? We're not confined to one or the other unless you want.
I could do either. I have planning board meetings on the third Thursday, so I can't do third Thursday.
First Wednesdays again? You don't have anything.
No, but I like Thursdays better.
Thursday. All right, that's fine with
No,
me.
but I don't work anymore.
Yeah, I know, that's what I was trying to
That
think.
gets to be a commute
Okay,
issue. that is-
First Thursday, third Thursday, I have something to every other month, but
Thursday is-
first Thursday.
First Thursday is great for me.
And the first Thursday in September, okay, do we all agree that maybe we'll just move to September?
That's fine.
I think it's good, because everybody's so busy,
Mom said you get some cute.
which is,
Yeah, we're gonna, be September,
oh, it's September first.
no, but yeah.
Oh, I think that's before Labor Day, but can we do it the
You want to do it the 8th?
8th, September 8th?
Hey, sounds good.
Dave, I had one more thing to ask you. Do you need money for software? So is that, are we at that point that you're gonna need?
We're getting close. Not just yet,
Okay.
but we should talk about that.
Okay.
Was it the first Thursday?
It's gonna be the second.
It's gonna
one
be
Because it's
because-
Labor Day weekend, if we have it on the first.
Of course.
September.
So-
8th at
So
6
it'd be
p.m.
the 8th.
But will it be consecutive, after that, the first Thursday?
First Thursday of the month, and I'll let Terry know that, and,
Super duper.
okay, first Thursday.
Did we have it? Is anybody on Zoom? No.
Oh, my goodness.
No, there was never anybody that came.
Oh, my gosh, we're all around.
Yeah.
This is
Maureen was going to be, I think.
That's, they would show up there if they had.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not one person came on.
No,
No.
Because I would have waved it.
I guess
Yeah.
so. She said.
All right.
no, I was looking, I don't like looking at myself.
Okay.
I'm gonna end, oh, we need to adjourn, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
Okay.
I'll second.
Oh, look at this. Oh, we're in
Okay,
sync.
very good. Now
All right,
let's see if I
thanks,
can turn this thing on.
I feel like we
Minutes out.
accomplished tonight.